Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Good evening, Adrian. My name is Jeff Longo, and I'm the guitarist from Blood of Christ in Canada.
Blood of Christ in Canada. How would you describe the music of Blood of Christ?
That's a unique blend, in my opinion, of death metal, like classic death metal, 90s death metal, and a little bit of black metal influence with some melodic riffs as well, and little hint of clean vocals. It's pretty dark. We've been calling ourselves epic dark metal since about 95, because we felt we don't really fall into either genre specifically, but we love both genres equally. So that's where the influence comes from.
So there are a lot of bands who say that they sound like death metal from, the late 80s, early 90s heyday, but you guys were actually active during that period.
Well, not the 80s, but yeah, the early to mid 90s. We started in about 93, 94. We were just kids, like, teenagers, but yeah, we're around then. And I don't really feel like we've matured and become more skilled and tighter and proficient with our music, but I feel like we're still writing from the same mindset as 95 and 96. So I still feel it's fair to call ourselves old school death metal.
So can you tell me about those early years and that mindset that you guys had? What brought you together and what were your intentions?
We were all there was like three of us in the same neighborhood where we grew up, and we all loved metal. We all rode BMX bikes together and stuff, and whenever we brought a stereo with us, we threw on metal. It started with Megadeth and Slayer and Overkill and Sacrifice and Razor and DRI and stuff like that. And I can't remember who introduced us to them, but the first extreme metal band we heard was Napalm Death, probably in around 1989 or so. And that was kind of the gateway to the more extreme stuff like Morbid Angel and Carcass and Enslaved and Emperor. One of our friends, our original bass player, Marek, his older brother used to take him to, we lived in London, Ontario, and it was a couple hours from the border with the States. And he would take him shopping there for Flint, Michigan, and Port Huron, I think, because you could buy music cheaper in the States back then than where we lived. So he'd take him down there every once in a while, and they'd come back with a huge haul of all the latest metal releases, on cassette, and we'd all, make copies of them and trade tapes and all that stuff. And that's how it started. And we just basically really loved the music. That was it. We just, we all had loved music our whole life and always wanted to play music, and it just felt right. That's why we started.
And how old were you guys when you formed Blood of Christ?
Probably 16 or something like that. My brother was the drummer. He would have been about 13 because he's younger than us, the rest of us. So mid to late teens.
And how old were you guys when you recorded that first demo?
I was in 94, so I would have been 17. And then that's there. Actually, we did two demos that summer. One's called Divine Requiem, and the other one, which has better quality, is called Frozen Dreams. And that's one of the ones we're reissuing now with CD and records. It did really well for us. It kind of, got us a little bit broader attention outside of our local scene. But I would have been 17. My brother was probably 13 or 14 on drums, and everybody else would have been around 18 or 19, 17 or 18.
So when people think of the Canadian death metal scene, I think they really think of what was going on in Quebec on the French side. What was the scene like where you guys were in Ontario?
It's incredible. Like Ontario is right beside Quebec, so you're right. Montreal specifically is kind of the the epicenter of Canadian death metal. Um, Most of the bands that come out of there are extremely talented and proficient and write really good music. Like um, our very first show was with Cryptopsy from Montreal. So we would have had their demo out at that point, the Ungentle Exhumation demo. They're super approachable. To us, they were just like Cannibal Corpse. Like they were, you know, in our minds, in our eyes, they were, legends, like on the same level as Cannibal Corpse. And when we wrote to them, the guitar player at the time, Steve Thibault, he's a legend, um, wrote back and sent us the album, the first album on cassette, Blasphemy Made Flesh, and we wanted to play shows with them, and they were into it, and brought them down to our hometown and booked a show, and it was incredible. It was like 200 kids there, and it was amazing. Really, really good times. And the scene back then was incredible. We had in London alone, we had Blood of Christ, we had a band called Porno with Flesh Feast, we had Summertime Daisies, a bunch of others, and I feel like the scene was really attracting attention. The shows were killer. You had a lot of bands from Toronto, from Ottawa. Um, it's a strong scene, and it's more known. Ontario is more known for things like Soulstorm or Razor or Sacrifice, though, like thrash metal. Actually, Soulstorm was industrial metal, but the main guy in Soulstorm had a band before that called Overthrow. So the thrash scene in Ontario was very strong, but that kind of predates the early '90s death metal movement in Quebec. But yeah, Ontario has kind of been, under the shadow of Quebec most of the time, but there are really strong bands from Ontario.
So you guys were fairly active until about 2003, when you released I believe that's your third album, Breeding Chaos.
Yeah, that's correct. That was recorded in 2003, and then I think Skyscraper Music put it out maybe January or February of 2004.
Okay. Did you guys get to play outside of Canada at all?
No, unfortunately, um, we have had several shows and mini tours and stuff booked in the States. And I feel it's kind of like there's a curse against us because every single one, um, going as far back as 1996, 97, pardon me, we were booked on the Milwaukee Metal Fest. Um, some miscommunication went down and we got kicked off the show. We were booked on a Cincinnati Fest back then, a Death Fest. Um, I can't remember what happened with that one. It was our fault. We couldn't make it. I think our singer got sick or something. I don't remember. In hindsight, we should have just played instrumental. But we've had a lot of shows and mini tours booked in the States, and never happens. Like there's a curse against us. But we really would like to, get to other regions where we haven't played before. We've played everywhere in Canada, all the way from Quebec to out west. But yeah, we haven't done anything international in our 25-year career.
So one of the questions, I don't know exactly how to phrase this, so I hope you'll forgive me if if I phrase this inelegantly. But one of the questions I had when the Blood of Christ releases were sent to me were how you guys have been around for so long and I never heard of you. Is there an answer to that?
No, I don't know. I mean, we've had a lot of exposure. Like we've had, especially our first album, like we had a deal with Pulverizer Records in Chicago. Um, they were a really strong underground death metal label. Like they had, Dying Fetus was on the label, for example. Flesh Grind was on the label. Several other bands, but anyway, the owner Randy Williams got a deal with Die Hard Music in Denmark, and they pressed, or reissued all the label's stuff over there, and they had really incredible distribution, like throughout Europe and the UK and Asia. It was incredible exposure, and really put us on the map, so to speak. Not like in a broader sense, like Cryptopsy or something, but I don't know why you haven't heard of us. To be honest, we're all over the internet these days. Like we actively use social media. Luck of the draw, I guess. Maybe lack of touring, lack of larger distribution. I don't know. Our current label, CDN Records, is a powerhouse when it comes to trading and distributing stuff. All like he's got connection all over the globe, so it's out there. Our music's out there.
It may just be me. I can be incredibly tunnel visioned when it comes to finding new bands. So you guys were fairly active until 2003, and for about 15 years you didn't release any new material. Why was that? What were you guys doing during that period?
Well, we were pretty active actually until about 2007. Um, and then my brother, the drummer Jason, got busy. He was working with a couple other bands. We basically were on a hiatus. That's all there is to it, because we got really busy with other projects. We both released a couple albums with other projects. Jason did some extensive touring with Baptized in Blood, and can't remember what else he did. Played in another Will of the Ancients, I think, from Toronto, black metal band. That's there's no larger meaning really. We just went through a lineup shuffle. Thing got really busy. Real life hit us, and we came back in 2016, and the time was right.
Was there any specific reason you guys got back together in 2016?
Yeah, we were talking about our first album, A Dream to Remember. It was released in the beginning of 1997. So that would have been the 20th anniversary coming up in 2017. Kind of wanted something for that. So that's what started it. We started just working on that and putting together a lineup to kind of support the anniversary for that album. And the plan was to do some touring to support it, but we ended up working on a new album instead and put out our fourth album, Unrelenting Declivity of Anguish with CDN Records. And then we just kept going.
And you guys did a couple splits after that, right?
Yeah, we did a 7-inch split with a band from Ottawa, a brutal death metal band called Deformatory, and that came out in a couple of years ago now, actually, 2018 or 2019, 2018. And then we did the split with Vomit Remnants. That's the one you were mentioning before that you have from Asher Media. They're a brutal death metal band from Japan. We put four songs on there, and they did a cover of a song from our first album, which was really flattering. Yeah, it's doing great. It's been really well for the record label, and we're really happy with it, how it turned out.
So I actually did a Q&A with Deformatory some years ago. And if those guys are listening to this, they've got a new album coming out, so expect an email soon. Let's talk about
coming out in July.
The Deformatory stuff.
Yeah, I think their new album's coming out in July.
Cool. So let's talk about the reissues that Blood of Christ is coming out. Tell me about these reissues.
Okay, so it's one of the demos from '94 is on there called Frozen Dreams. That's one we were talking about earlier. But the main kind of bulk of the reissue is centralized around our 1995 demo called The Lonely Flowers of Autumn. That was the demo that was probably the most critical turning point in our history, where we really developed our own unique sound and kind of made a pivot from just being a death metal band to incorporating a lot of other dark elements like black metal and doom metal and clean vocals and more introspective, poetic lyrics. That one also, really pushed our reach further globally. We got a lot of attention through tape trading and sending it to underground zines, magazines, and really strong reviews. And it earned us our first recording contract with Pulverizer Records. So it was a really good time. And last year was the 25th anniversary. We wanted it to happen last year, but just, the pandemic, as I'm sure you've experienced, really changed things for everybody, kind of put a roadblock up. But anyway, it's coming out now, and we're really happy with it. I remixed the '95 demo from the original master tapes, and then we've sent it over to Dan Swano, who used to sing for Edge of Sanity, to master it, and he mastered our last the Split album as well. So that was really incredible working with him. Basically it's an honor to have him working on our stuff. We were huge fans of Edge of Sanity when we were kids. So this release is really special to us. It's going to be coming out on compact disc. It'll have 12 tracks on the CD. So the original 94 demo plus the 95 demo plus 2 bonus songs from 1996 that were supposed to be on a 7-inch single with Torture Records in Italy. On the story behind that is we don't know if Torture Records ever actually released it or not, because the owner of the label kind of vanished into thin air after we sent him the masters and the artwork. So we're finally, taking this chance to get those songs out, and it's fitting because it's the same lineup. The original singer Jason DeVille is on the entire 12 songs, right? So it's very suitable because it's kind of that era, that time frame where we had him as our vocalist. And each demo will also be pressed on cassette individually. So it's pretty exciting. We're pretty happy about it.
Tell me about these remasters. How would you compare the remastered sound to the original sound?
It's much more powerful. It really brings it up. It actually, I don't know how he did it, but Dan Swano, like, I don't know. I feel like he took my mix and added more clarity to it. I don't know how he did that with a master, but it really gave it a lot more volume and kind of range or width to the mix. It sounds a lot more powerful. It sounds really good, in my opinion. It's a lot more punchy. Just really gives it new life. Really gives it a better listening experience, I think. So,
Was Swana working off of digital files?
yeah, I just sent him. I just bounced the mix out of Pro Tools into like a WAV file and just send that to him, and that's what he works with.
So I think you mentioned this, but when these 2 demos originally came out, were they just on cassette?
Yes, they were. So that's another reason it's really, exciting for us, because we always wanted to have our demo on CD, and it's finally happening. So it's pretty exciting.
So we talked about this a little bit, but recently you also issued a split with Vomit Remnants called Eastern Beast, Western Wolf.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the split.
Okay. We had been talking about that since roughly 2017 with Vomit Remnants drummer Keisuke. I'd been kind of talking to him, off and on for over 10 to 15 years, right? Like just tape trading and, writing back and forth. And I saw him at a couple festivals and stuff in the States. We met each other there. We're both fans of the bands, right? Each other's band. It just kind of felt like something interesting and natural to do. We wanted to do something with them. We'd love to play some shows together, but Japan's pretty far away. But well, you never know. Never say never. But so just roughly around 2017, we kind of started talking, saying, "Hey, do you want to do something together? Let's do like a split album or something, whatever." And took a couple years to get together, but finally last year we put it all together and turned out great, in my opinion. So each band we threw 4 songs, and they've got 5 or 6 songs on there. A couple brand new songs from them, a couple live tracks, a cover song. Um, it's pretty good. We're really happy with it.
Jeff, do you write most of the music for Blood of Christ?
Yes and no. I mean, as the guitarist, it's kind of natural that most of the riffs come from me, but everybody puts in, like, I mean, my brother, for example, he's the drummer, but he plays guitar as well a little bit and comes up with really interesting and unique patterns, and um, you know, kind of shows them to me, and then I adopt them and turn them into a song. Like the second song on the split from us is called "Sworn to the Northern Star." Those are all my brother's riffs, for example, right? So it's really a joint effort where we all get together in a jam room and put the finishing touches on the songs, kind of mold them into what they become.
Now, would you say that your writing style or the style of Blood of Christ has changed at all from those early recordings to the stuff that you've put out recently?
Um, Excuse me. No, not really. I think the big shift has been lineup changes with singers, so that affects it. But I think the core is still there. Like, I mean, obviously, with when people age, your personality develops, and you're not necessarily the exact same person you were when you were 17. So there's going to be natural differences there, right, in your writing. But I think essentially it's the spirit is still the same. It's still there.
Where was your side of the split recorded?
That was a really unusual recording for us because of the pandemic. So we didn't do it together, which is really unusual for us. We did the drums in my brother's apartment, and then he sent them to me, and then I recorded the guitars in my basement, and our singer Hank recorded vocals just in his basement, and we put it all together. We really had no choice because what we normally would do is actually get into a recording studio together and record this stuff for the most part live off the floor, like we used to do in the 90s.
Do you handle most of the production for Blood of Christ?
Do you mean like the mixing or the production, like the producer?
Like the mixing, like recording to bouncing the mixes and stuff like that.
I do now. Yeah, I mix everything now. The first time it was just me mixing is our split release, and we have another one coming up. I remixed the reissues, and then we're working on another album that should be out later this year, and I'm mixing that as well. But in the past, we would go somewhere else to do it, and have someone else mix it. But with technology and experience and practice, we don't really need to do it that way anymore. We still definitely prefer to record drums, in a real studio with a good drum room, and same for vocals. And we have a guy we really like going to. His name's Thomas Ireland, out in Goderich, Ontario. He's got a studio called Ice House Studios. He's recorded a lot of the local stuff. Um, he's an incredible engineer for recording drums. I absolutely love the sound he gets with drums. So that's kind of the setup we're going with now.
What can you tell me about this album that you guys have coming out at the end of the year?
It's not all brand new material. Basically, what we did was We took our third and fourth albums and kind of broke them down and dissected it, and we're reworking them with all brand new vocals and brand new bass lines, and I've redone some of the guitars. So it's kind of like a reboot of the third and fourth albums put together into one 12-song album. It's going to be called Chaos and Anguish. And the kind of theme of the album is going to be inspired by the impacts of the Industrial Revolution on humanity and our planet, just like what we feel has been a real negative result from that. It's really changed the world we live in and changed us as a species, I think. So it's going to be pretty dark.
And will this also be coming out through CDN?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Tell me a little bit about CDN, because I'm not sure, besides you guys and a few other Canadian bands, I'm not sure who they are and what they do.
Okay, yeah, CDN Records, they've been around. So the owner's name is Craig Newman. I first met Craig in probably 1994, I think. We went down, they're from Windsor, Ontario, which is across the river from Detroit, Michigan. So it's southwestern Ontario. It's a real manufacturing town, like the big, the big auto manufacturers are there, like Ford and GM and Chrysler. It's actually where I was born, in Windsor. But anyway, we went down there to play some shows, and that's where we met Craig. And he was the first person to really support us and take on our demo tape and, distribute it for us and trade it globally with people. Like even back then, he already had a really massive network of trading. So I actually think he might have started in 1990 or 91. But yeah, he's been going strong since then, nonstop. It's an underground label. It's independent, small label, but you know, he works harder than a major label, in my opinion. Like he treats every single band on the label equally and treats them with respect and gives them all the same attention. Works really hard to get your product out there and get you exposure. It's a really good label. He has tons of bands he works with, like not just bands from Toronto or London or Windsor. Like he's got bands from Europe and Russia and Finland and South Africa and States. He works with bands all over the place. It's a really killer label.
Very cool. So the reissues for Frozen Dreams and The Lonely Flowers of Autumn will be out through CDN Records, I believe in July, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when. I'm not. Yeah, July.
So Jeff, how can people order these reissues?
They can just go right to cdnrecords.com. He's got it all set up right there on his website. He'll probably have other connections as well, like other distributors that will have it, globally. But right direct from their website is probably the best way, cdnrecords.com. I think the pre-orders are going to be up very soon. People can also write to us if they want to through our Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or we're on all that stuff. Or, the best way, in my opinion, is come and see us play a show and we'll have it there.
And the Blood of Christ, Vomit to Remnants split is called Eastern Beast, Western Wolf, and it's out now. How is that available? How can people get that? Is it also out through CDN?
Yep, same thing. Right through their website.
So you mentioned Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Is there any other social media info you want people to know about?
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah, we're on Bandcamp as well. We have our first couple albums up there. We're actually going to be reissuing those next year as well. We're going to remix them and reissue them.
Uh, so the first three albums,
First two are up there
first two,
on our
okay.
Bandcamp. Yeah.
Uh, and is that the only way they're available? I'm assuming that they're long out of print.
Oh, I have some because CDN Records reissued the first album back in 2006. I have some of those, I think, kicking around. We usually have physical copies, like we just reprint them ourselves, and we usually have those at our shows.
And what about the other two albums, the third and fourth? I know you guys are recording some of the songs, but are those also out through CDN?
He might have copies of the third album. I'm not 100% sure, but the fourth album is sold out and it's not being repressed.
Any particular reason?
Yes, but it's a long story. I just think the best thing to do is wait for the reissue of it or the reboot because it's going to be a lot stronger and more exciting.
Now, were you tempted at all to re-record the songs from the demos?
Yes and no. You mean the ones that are being reissued this
Yeah,
next month?
yeah.
We did talk about that, but just the logistics of making that happen with this pandemic, it was next to impossible because those songs I definitely would have wanted to record properly, in the studio, not over the internet. And we just couldn't get that together in time. I'm not, that's still an open possibility. Maybe, next year, if things are safe and back to normal, everybody's okay, we could look at that because we definitely want to. Um, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Uh, Now, from your early demos and trading tapes and doing zines like you were in the early '90s to when you returned a few years back, what would you say the biggest change in the scene is? And I use the term scene loosely. I don't necessarily mean just Canada or the death metal scene.
You mean like how has it changed over the past 25 years?
Well, I
Um,
mean, you're active with, you know, the underground in terms of tape trading and stuff like that. I'm wondering if you notice a change in mentality either in the fans or in the industry or anything else.
it seems like to me, I don't know how to put this. It's like almost like music is more disposable now, or a flash in the pan. Like people, it's almost like a full album listening experience has been lost. But I wouldn't say that's applicable to metal fans. I would just say that's the kind of more larger general population. Um, Pop music, for example, like pop music in the 70s and 80s, and probably the 90s, people like actually bought hard copies. Well, that was kind of their only choice, but and they actually listened to the music and it meant something. But now I think it's more like just, pardon me, in the background for them. And I feel like the whole digital streaming thing has really crippled artists. Um, the internet, when it really got big and digital files became a thing, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when it really exploded. It really hurt the industry, but it didn't eliminate it. But the streaming stuff kind of seems different. It feels like it's just totally, you can't monetize it at all. And that's not, for me, it doesn't matter. I'm not like a professional traveling, touring, full-time touring musician where I depend on that to, to survive. But for the bigger bands who really depend on that, it's kind of a serious situation because they have to find other ways to really, make revenue or provide for their families or themselves, or even financially justify a full-scale tour. So it seems like they've turned more to other forms of, revenue, like merchandising and endorsements and stuff. But I feel like it's like the core element of it is being forgotten, and that's good music. But that might be a negative take on it. The internet and YouTube and stuff like that is also good for, discovering new bands. So it's a catch-22.
You mentioned playing shows. Things are opening up and bands are starting to go on tour again. Do you guys have anything lined up or any plans, either for this year or next year?
Not yet. We're just kind of watching how things go. We want to, we want to get out there as soon as possible, especially to support these reissues. We'd love to do some shows where we play, the Lonely Flowers of Autumn demo plus the 296 songs, kind of in its entirety, which we haven't done probably for 20 years. But we'll just have to see how things go. Logistically, it's difficult because we all live far apart from each other. So even for us to be able to get into rehearsals, the rehearsal spot where we usually meet up for band practices only just recently opened. So, we're slowly starting to brainstorm, talk about that. But definitely long term, we're going to be getting back out there for sure.
Is there anything else you want to say?
About the same topic or just in general?
In general, anything you want people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, just check out the reissues next month. Check out the label if you haven't heard about them. CDN Records is a great label. He has a ton of products on his website. He's a great resource for finding underground death metal and black metal. Check us out on our social media. If there's any bands out there in different regions that are listening and want to trade shows or set something up together, we're open to it. We're always looking for new bands to play with. Yeah, that's about it. I really appreciate you, Adrian, taking the time to speak with me. And I just hope people really enjoy the reissue as much as we do, and the split release, which is still moving. So that's really good news.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Adrian.